feel like in maybe the best way to compare it with a gear shift car, when the gear shift is in neutral, no ambition for anything, something feels like numbness, and also it feels alright.
To look at it a bit humorously, we can say it's all about the ID. ID is identification. But this word is interesting. The word I and D in a way are valuable for a person who wants to go deeper to remember in a different way. The so-called I with which we are identified is part of death. I die. And this is what we in so many ways try to avoid, not confront, not recognize, try to escape from. But as you go deeper, sooner or later, you come to realize that when you are not clinging to any automatic processes blindly, when you see the interconnectedness of suffering with clinging, when you are honest being yourself, honest being with yourself, and notice that my suffering is connected with my clinging to my desires. This is the basic reminder from Buddha. He said the root cause of sorrow is suffering. The root cause of suffering is desire. It, when you hear it without deeper consideration, it looks like, oh, he's against the world, he's against desire, he's against your being alive and all that. But when you consider it and understand it from your own deeper consideration, you see in that something totally different. In fact, that's what was also happening to me when I was in one of the either higher school or in the pre-university, one of those periods when in the history books, the Indian history book, there were 2-3 lines about Buddha. And one of these lines, Gautam Siddhartha, the son of the king of Kapilavastu, his name was Siddhartha at that time, so he sought the truth and found out that desire is the root cause of sorrow. When I read it, it somehow came to my questioning process. Is it really true? Can it be like that? Because I was always a little bit suspicious when there is this attitude that you have to be against the world, you have to renounce the world to experience God. I thought that cannot be, because if the world is a creation of the Creator, the God, whatsoever way one reminds it, how can it be that you have to be renouncing this world? It somehow, in my logic at that time, didn't come together. So I said, I have to inquire. So I started looking, whenever there is any sadness, any pain, any disappointment, any unwell state, I was looking, is there a desire behind it? Is there someone who is clinging to this desire? And each time I went with this inquiry deeper in me, it became clear that what he indicates is very basic, very true, very valuable. So I considered then further and said, okay, it gives me also a clue to go beyond suffering, go beyond pain. Because when I see the desire which I am clinging to, and from my side I stop clinging to it, I stop holding to it. I'm not against the desire, but I say, okay, the desire is there, the desire has come in me, it's okay, but I don't need to hold to it. I don't need to cling to it. And when I'm ready to not cling to it, the suffering also has no basis. It changes the whole situation. So it was not as if it is against life, but in that I found a clue to go about life and take responsibility in a deeper sense for myself. I saw that I am responsible to make my life into a miserable, suffering, bitter state, or when I am ready not to cling, when I am ready to recognize the interconnectedness of desire and pain, suffering, anguish, then I can let it go. So this is very important when you consider yourself. Don't believe anybody, including what I am saying now, because that's not going to be enough. You have to question, you have to confront, you have to consider more very carefully and deeply. What is this identification? What is this idea of the I, which is operating in such a way that it is preventing you from being free? What is this entanglement? What is the nature of that inner reality? So it is your honest inquiry which makes you capable to see deeper and to see through this whole entanglement between desire and suffering. When you don't cling to your desire, then it is as if there is no one. Because that is how we have been identified with. That is how we have been imagining ourselves to be, the one who is looking through the conditioning, through the beliefs, through the biological and psychological social program, what we imbibe, and believing that I am this personality. So our identification with the body, our identification with the personality is unconscious and therefore also deeply binding. But as you observe and as you start seeing, as you start confronting yourself honestly, you start recognizing that, oh, when I don't cling to this personality, when I am not clinging blindly to this nor that, it feels a little bit lost. It feels a little bit numb. But then you also see that is where you are at ease. That's where you are in peace. That is where you feel deeply inwardly relaxed. The German word Entspannung is very interesting. It indicates indirectly that our normal state where we are in is in some kind of tension. Spannung. Entspannung means going out of the tension. For tension, there has to be some kind of conflict inside, some kind of process, which is a subtle fight, struggle. When you are not clinging to anything, that is when you are relaxing. We need the sleep so much because on an unconscious level, that is when we are relaxing very deeply. That is why it's also very rejuvenating. Without the sleep, somebody has to go on without the possibility of sleep, it will be a big torture. It will create a total disbalance. That's why in some of the torture process of the dictatorships and other kind of oppressive governments, they are using this tendency to prevent people from sleeping. They force it. So you can understand it more wakefully. You can see the interconnectedness of relaxation. And when you consciously disentangle yourself from this identification, the idea of I being separate from the whole, that is what is the deeper aspect of it. When you are holding to the idea of I being separate, then you are also caught up in the desires, because this I is clinging to the idea that I am the body, that I am this personality, and so it is a whole interwoven unconscious process. But as you observe, and it is very valuable, it's only your own wakeful observation what enables you to see it. You are not trying to change yourself. You are not trying to achieve something. You are being honest with yourself. It is simply being, what one can say, using the common sense. Because using the common sense, you want to understand who I am really. What is the nature of my reality. That is why people who are somewhere courageous and deeply honest, sooner or later they will come to face this aspect. And then you see that if I cling to my identity and this idea of being separate from the whole, that is what with the identification is happening. Then there is tension, there is suffering, there is a whole entanglement in the game. But when you are not identifying yourself with this nor that, then you start opening yourself to the reality, to awaken to your true reality, to your truth, your true identity in the deeper sense. That's what you are when you are not clinging to any of these game areas. It is frightening when we are coming across this space. It is looking like, oh, what to do? Because we are always used to believing that I must do, I must manage, I must. So now you have to start very carefully with your inner wakefulness. Look, what are the factors which you need to take care? What are the factors which are valuable? how to support the body, how to manage the game in the world without getting lost in it. That is all. The world becomes no more a suffering, but the world becomes a playground when you are not trapped in the duality. The Bhagavad Gita starts with the indication Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. It's very, very beautiful hint about the nature of our reality. It is a temple of truth, but it is also the place of blindness. Dharma is the way of the truth. Dharma is referring to the essential nature. Kurukshetra refers in this Bhagavad Gita in a double sense, not only to the father of some of the princes, his name was Kuru, but Kuru also was blind, and Kuru also refers in this context to the blindness. The world of duality is relative. The world of duality is like the virtual reality which we can indicate in the internet, in the computer world. It has no real basis. You cannot cling to it, you cannot settle there. It is all temporal, it is all relative. Temporal means it's just connected with time. Time is going on changing. And it is when you start looking and confronting our reality, you see that from the very moment we are born in this body, we start identifying, but this body is going on changing every moment. You are a baby, then you become a little grown-up child, and then you start walking, getting into the game of the society, goes to school, goes to university or whatsoever. So your life starts, and then you get into the social games, partnership, then come into the worldly games of duality. The body is going on changing every moment, it's getting older. So one can put it in this way to look at it from one side. From the moment we are born, we are marching very rapidly towards death. Because that is the only sure thing. When we are born, everything may happen or may not happen, but everyone who is born has to die sooner or later. So what can we cling to? What can we hold to? But we don't have it easy when we would confront this reality like this. That is why the confrontation of the reality is also not made easy from the very nature of the reality, that only when you start seeking, only when you start exercising your intelligence, or when you start being really loving, or out of suffering, you start questioning, what is this suffering? What is creating my suffering? What is the truth behind it? How can I get free from it? And many people who seek the truth don't come through the first or the second possibility, but more because they are suffering. This is how human nature is. We have to observe all this, and it is good that you are starting to notice these states, but you have to also look how the habitual tendency to look for something to suffer, because when you are suffering, then the idea of, oh, poor me, I am suffering, I have nothing to. So we get into the game of duality again. when you are not fighting against anybody, when you are not clinging to any kind of blind attitudes, because you see that all is so relative. All has to be looked and considered from moment to moment, from situation to situation. Nothing is so absolute in the usual game of the world. What is good? You have to consider what is the sense behind it. You have to have the orientation for the good. You have to have the orientation to that what is loving. But yet, you can see, you cannot go from the head like a computer, like a robot about goodness and lovingness. From moment to moment, from situation to situation, you have to consider and apply. Apply your understanding, use your knowledge, and act carefully. Because what act may be loving in one context, may be totally unloving in another context. Or what looks unloving in one context may be very important and valuable and life-saving in another consideration. So we have to apply, we have to consider what is good, what is right, what is love. That is also why, even though there are rules and regulations, courts are there, because in the court it gets questioned, it gets considered. The arguments are brought from different sides, so they try to come to a state of justice. And this is very beautiful, very valuable, because that is how humanity is coming beyond a one-sided, blind way of going about life. We start questioning our own blind interpretations and seek what is true, what is real. That is how we become more honest, more compassionate, more real. We were recently coming across, and we had it in one of the readings in some small gathering, a statement of the great woman who was an anthropologist. I don't know if she's still alive. If she's alive, she must be very old, but it's possible that she's not alive. I don't know exactly. I just came across it. I've heard about her. I have not read her articles or books. But this statement, what she made, is very, very beautiful and very, very insightful, very valuable. Someone asked him, when does, from your understanding, civilization start? The human civilization, when does it start? Where does it start? So, the students who were with her were expecting when the human beings started working with this kind of tools or making this kind of houses or this or that. No, her observation was very much insightful. She said, where we see a healed thigh bone, that is where the civilization is starting. So the others asked, but what is the connection between the thigh bone and civilization? What are you trying to say with that? So she explained. In the normal animal world, when someone breaks their leg, they cannot survive. Then they are doomed to die. But when someone takes care of this person and helps the thigh bone to heal, there the humanness is coming into manifestation. There somebody is being kind, somebody is being compassionate. This manifestation of kindness this manifestation of compassion, that is the beginning of humanity. That is the beginning of human civilization. Very, very beautiful hint. Very valuable. We are normally preoccupied with our narrow idea of the I. We are identified with it and react in the unconscious way of going like an animal or like a robot. But when you start considering more carefully, when you start looking more deeply, when your intelligence comes into the whole thing, then your perception changes. You start seeing the interconnectedness. You start becoming more human. You start seeing also the humanness of the other, who is apparently critical to you or questioning you or inimical to you. And the deeper you go, the more it becomes clear to you that everybody is in their own way trying to come in terms of life, come in terms with life. And everybody is in a more careful and deeper consideration, fragile, vulnerable, helpless. When you start seeing this in you, when you start considering it from this basis, then you don't carry any inimical feeling towards anybody. You don't hold to any hatred and anger towards anybody. Deep within you start relaxing. This is what looks like numbness for the normal way of looking. But when you don't settle with that judgment, consider, go deeper, then you look and see, oh, now I'm not overtaken by my conditioned idea of myself and reality. Now I can really look and see what life is making available to me, what way I can be creative in life, what way I can bring my energy and understanding to live the love. Otherwise, we are only normally going, I want it, I don't want it, I like it, I don't like it. It's all around the I. And this ID, which we are normally identifying with, is the I die. This I dies. But once you see that in the right perspective, then you see that this is the beginning when you can start living more playfully, more joyously. What is it need to be inimical to anybody? So once you start relaxing and go deeper into your relaxed state, looking at yourself, looking at each other, then you start discovering more and more of the wonder of reality. Then you start having the time and patience and energy to consider each aspect of reality. And you see what a blessing this life is. What a wonder every aspect of this life process is. Then you start recognizing the beauty, the playfulness, the aesthetic sensibility behind the whole creator and the creation. And this is what is very, very valuable when it happens through your natural development. That is when the human being becomes truly human. Before that, we are caught in this kind of condition, this kind of program. So it is as if you make a robot with this kind of program and it's going on reacting in a certain way. The human being is, till we start applying the consciousness and goes beyond it, trapped in this conditioned state. And in that state, we are not so different from a robot. Yes, in a certain sense, we are also like the animal, but the animal has to be understood very carefully. The animal is manifesting in the creative process of this life with its unique qualities. It manifests it, but it cannot be different. Therefore, it is deeply in peace and harmony with nature. The human being comes in conflict in different kind of difficulties and problems, can get trapped in pride and prejudice, can get trapped in power games or in depression, because the human beings can rise above the conditioning, can become aware of oneself, can see through what we are, who we are, in the normal way of looking, in the normal conditioned way of seeing. This aspect J. Krishnamurti has been very insistently reminding everybody about. Become aware of your conditioning. Bring the attention to the idea of the I, who you are operating from. The conditioned I is not your real I. But you may hear it again and again, but very few people use this as an indication that I should question it in myself. So, people who are only remaining on a logical, rational level, not confronting their fears, not confronting their whole approach, not questioning their conditioning, just discuss, theorize, argue for or against, and make it into another thing to cling to. That is why when Krishnamurti was in his last period of his life, he couldn't believe that people who have been listening to him all these years are going on in the same settled state. Very few gather the courage to confront, to look deeper. And they come into a state of inner balance, inner clarity, inner silence. And they leave the grace, they leave the beauty, they leave the wonder. They awaken to the blessedness of life. So continue to stay wakefully and allow yourself to go deeper. When the automatism comes and says, oh, everything is so numb, no, what is this? I don't want it. Watch that eye coming from the back door. Now this judgment, numb, we have to use words, we have to bring these concepts which are coming up, but see that words and concepts and judgments are still part of the relative way of looking at things. That is why when you learn to be with the moment, learn to look at all this, what is transpiring in you, then you see that you're coming more and more deeply in touch with the reality. That is why I remind you in so many ways, in each moment, in each interaction, look what is transpiring in you. It is not an attempt to figure out and say, analyze you and to put you in a box, oh, I am good or I am bad, I am holy or I am a sinner. No. Whatever thoughts are coming, whatever undercurrent process is going on, bring attention to it. For example, you're looking at somebody and then fear comes up, or some desire comes up, or some calculation is there undercurrently, some expectation is there. Bring attention to all these things, what's going on in you, because that what is happening in you in an unconscious way is determining the further development in your life. This is where your energy is trapped. But when it comes to the conscious level, it is not trapped. Then you can go with that what is creative intelligently, that what you find is valuable energetically, but that what is against understanding, against love, against intelligence, you can see it and let it pass by. You don't go with it, you don't go against it. But you can become free only when you are bringing attention to this, what is going on in this moment, right now, each moment. When you hear something, when you say something, when you are looking at somebody, when you are in any act or in any kind of interaction, be in touch with yourself. This is why George Gurdjieff, one of these very insightful people from the last century, who has been very much misunderstood by many, but he reminded people, remember yourself. In every step, when you are walking across the street, he says, be with this one who is walking across. That means be rooted in the consciousness without getting trapped in the identification. In the state of identification, we are trapped in the game of duality. But in the state of being rooted in consciousness, you are in the game, but you are not caught in it. You are watching the whole game. You are allowing yourself to be present to not only what comes from outside, but what is transpiring inside you. In this is the clue. In this is your chance to rise above the entanglement in suffering. When you can watch all the attitudes, beliefs, expectations, desires, wishes, all what is undercurrently working you, to which you are unconsciously clinging, which you are identified with in one way or the other, let it become transparent to yourself. You are not having to do anything about it directly. You need to bring it in touch with your intelligence. You need to allow this connection of what is working in you together with your common sense. So when I speak like this, I am telling you that the whole inner work is nothing of some esoteric, faraway thing. It may look like demystifying. Yes, demystifying that what is falsely mystified. The nature of the reality is mysterious. It is not something which we can logically, rationally fix and put it in a little box and say, I have it. No, it is beyond this eye. But our misunderstanding and our whole pride and prejudice, the whole entanglements in different form of identification, that is keeping us blind to the reality, blind to the truth, and preventing us from living the joy, living the beauty, living the love. So understand through your own questioning, through your own interaction with the reality in a conscious way. So this is a valuable state you are going through. Don't settle in it in any kind of blind way. And it is valuable that you are bringing up these things, and that is a sense of our having a context like this. I'm not trying to teach anything to anybody. I don't try to change anybody. But those who are seeking the truth, those who are wanting to question themselves and the reality, these moments when there is unclarity and doubt, when someone is there who can bring light in these areas, that is all what is needed. That is why I recommend to anybody, anywhere in the world, when you are in the inner process, when you are seeking the truth, Look for an inner friend who can support you and help you, who can question your identity, who has himself or herself questioned his or her identity and can see through that. Of course, you cannot figure out exactly, but your openness to question, that is what is important. Your sincerity is what finally matters. When you are sincere and you are open to look, life will support you to go further beyond all kind of entanglements here or there. Any other question or anything else in anyone?
I'm honest, sometimes when I'm in the state of clinging and to want everything fixed, then sometimes it's helpful for me to see a benefit, a kind of benefit, not to cling. And this while between the feeling of I cling and the step not to cling, sometimes it's schwer auszuhalten. And then I was thinking just of the picture Dana was doing once in the academy, and she was painting this bridge between one, so I say between one state and another state. So sometimes it can help me when I walk down the Dreisam to see that everything is in flow. So what I want to say is not always for me just enough to meditate. Sometimes I also need what I like to have that the remembrance is coming quicker.
It is human, it is natural that it is also the way it is described. But see the delicateness in the whole inner journey. On one side, we want to have everything achieved right now, so that no more problem, no more suffering, everything is under control. But the paradoxical nature of the reality is such, it is not the so-called I who wants to manage and get it done and have no problem that can manage it, that can force it. It is the understanding the nature of the I, understanding that this so-called I with which we are identifying and the judgment around it, the judgment arising from that, the calculations around it, the clinging, what is going on, it has to become only transparent to ourselves. When we are saying that, oh, I want to see the advantage of not clinging in certain moments, who is preventing you? Again, we can say we want to have it in a way that we can manage it. So this manager is saying, no, what is the thing? Now, it's a kind of argument you are putting to yourself in a certain way. Oh, no, why do you want to not cling? It is all okay like that. And so you don't see it. But you have to look, who is bringing this argument? From where does this argument come from? So, begin to go deeper in the moments in day-to-day life. And that will help you to see also in the moments where there is unclarity, what am I clinging to? Who is this I who is clinging? What is the nature of its reality? And see the difference. You are not trying to change yourself. You are not trying to get rid of the clinging. Because if there is somebody who is trying to get rid of the clinging, there is still a subtle identification. There is somebody who says, oh, I want to get rid of the clinging so that I can have it completely free right now as I want it. But it is not the so-called I awakening to the truth. It is awakening to the truth which makes us aware of the relativeness of the so-called I, of the illusoriness of the so-called I. And it is awakening to the dream nature of what we call reality, which helps us to bring the attention and experience the reality, the truth, the divinity, the wonder which is behind the duality, which is beyond the duality to be experienced. So bring attention to all this impatience, all these things, and when you find it good to go for a walk, why not? And river is always a nice reminder. It is always flowing. As Heraclit was putting, you cannot enter into the river twice, because he's reminding through that everything is going on changing. The river which was there before in front of you, in 1 minute later, you are seeing the same flowing process, but you notice also that when you consider carefully, it is not the same water. The water which was there before is somewhere else in the river, is going towards the ocean. The water which is in front of you, when you are just sitting and watching the river, you will see that it's going on changing. And so it is with everything in life. So it's a beautiful reminder. And those who look more deeply, they will see that it's not only the river which is changing, but the one who is watching the river is also going on changing. The whole body, the whole personality, the whole feelings, it is all ongoingly moving and changing. That is what Buddha used to call anicca. Everything is moving and changing. That is what the scientists are also now observing, that even those objects which looks like so solid, they are also made from atomic and subatomic particles which are in deeper looking, in deeper observation. The quarks, the subatomic particles, they can't figure out, because not only they are indefinable in the deeper sense, they see that when they are observing it, it behaves in a certain way, but when they are not observing, it seems to behave in a different way. So it looks like they have their own ways of dealing. So what becomes more visible is that even that what looks so solid is not solid. Everything is in this process of dance. Everything is in the process of moving and changing. And when we bring the attention more wakefully and deeply, we start seeing it in a different way. That is where you can see life is more like a dance. And this beautiful concept in the Hindu background is very valuable to consider, where it is said the creator and the creator cannot be separated. The dancing God, Nataraja. God as a dancer. Because the dance and the dancer cannot be separated. So it is saying that it is not that the world and God are separate, but we need to bring the awareness to see the deeper interconnectedness of everything, and then we see that the duality is apparent, but deep behind the duality is a non-dualistic basis. Bring the attention more deeply. Bring the presence from moment to moment. And even when you are not walking near the river, when you are being present to yourself, you are with the river wherever you are. Because you will see everything is going on changing. But this has to become your innermost understanding that when I don't take the initiative to bring this remembrance, the automatism is pulling me into the habitual ways of reacting. So our real challenge is our inner automatism with which we are identified with. And when you observe this inner automatism in day-to-day life, from moment to moment, not in a struggling way, but more in a gentle way, more in a playful way, but with the inner honesty and determination, then you notice that slowly, slowly, things clear up. This is what the Zen master Bhashkar was indicating with his haiku, sitting quietly, doing nothing. Spring comes and the grass grows by itself. The sitting quietly doing nothing is a very important basis, because otherwise we are going on interfering. We are going on judging, we are going on comparing, we are going on calculating. We are going on clinging, we are going on fighting in different ways. But when you are observing the whole undercurrent process in you, not choosing one part against the other, you are not trying to change yourself. Remember this. What I am indicating is that not that you have to now change yourself, you have to manage to do something, you have to be somebody else. No. Bring attention to that what is. Let yourself become aware of what is taking place in you, together with what you are experiencing from the outside. Be in touch with the wholeness of the moment in you. That brings about developments, that brings about changes, but it is not somebody trying to change oneself to another image, to another personality. Normally when you are trying to change yourself, there is one part trying to change the other part and want to present a personality which is fitting with a certain kind of concept. But that is not going to be realistically possible, that you can settle in some concept and become clear and free. So bring the attention to see that what is, bring the attention to that what is going on undercurrently in yourself, even though the automatism always distracts oneself with this or that. This is why I say, be a friend to yourself, be kind with yourself, and with this quality of friendship and kindness, bring the awareness. Let things which are going on undercurrently become transparent to yourself. And from this arises the inner flowering. And that is how you become aware of the blessedness, what life is. Before we conclude for this evening, we sit some moments, we sit the next 15 minutes with the remembrance to be inwardly wakeful and present to all what is. That is what the mirror-like consciousness reminds. The mirror is not interfering in any way. The mirror does not choose one against the other. This quality of presence. With that, with closed eyes, we sit the next 15 minutes.